you. That's a very nice introduction, Dane. I appreciate it. I'm Colleen, and I teach
Yes.
drama at LPS Hayward. I've also taught I've co-taught guided studies and lit laying intensive with Dane. So I have some experience with using reading strategies, but it's always something that I'm mindful of wanting to build in my classroom, particularly now, given the circumstances of this year and just in general. I think it's really important. I think drama and ELA go together like probably no other two classes. So I think that this is really exciting. And here is, I'm gonna get my doc cam from my classroom for this semester.
Next level.
You have a functioning doc cam?
I do, that I never use, which is, I know that sounds really ridiculous. I never use it, but except for like sometimes script analysis, but I really want to get into it now, especially given some stuff I'm thinking about doing. So this is my project.
Lovely.
And I'm going to take you guys through, this is a lesson that I do every year, usually towards the middle of the second semester. So the students are very well, in my class, they're very bonded at this point, and they're very ready to take risks with each other in a drama space. So performing with each other, directing each other in short plays. And this is when they start to write plays together. So this is from my playwriting unit that I do. And it's based around the Teatro Campesino, which is a theater company that came out of California in the 1960s. And it actually has a huge social studies component to it. And I'll kind of should take you guys through it right here. So it came from, you guys, some of you or all of you may be familiar with the Delano grape strikes, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta in the 1960s. It was the first incident of organized farm workers in California and the United States. It took place in Delano, California, and you can kind of see here like the protest signs and the grapes. I'm not at all a visual artist at all, but this was really fun to do. And that was a huge moment in California American history. And Luis Valdez, who is now one of the most preeminent playwrights in the United States, he was a farm worker. He came from a family of migrant farm workers in Delano, California, just like Mr. Chavez. They're from the same town. And he created something called Teatro Campesino, which is the theater of the farm worker. And what he did with it was he created these what are called actos, which are short plays that take the experience of people working in the fields and their battle with the folks who owned these farms, and they turn them into plays. And the actors were farm workers and the audience were farm workers, and they would come together in a hall, and this is where they were having the first like strike meetings. They would present these short plays, and everybody would get really passionate because they would see their experience on stage for the first time. And that was really that was a really powerful and motivating experience for folks. And then eventually this became kind of like its own vein of theater that became part of the protest movement across the United States for different types of movements, not just for organized labor in the farm for the farm workers, but for all sorts of different issues. And Luis Valdez went on to write Zoot Suit and a ton of other amazing plays, and he's just a really prolific playwright. And he directed La Bamba and wrote it. Like he's a huge deal. But it all started from this idea of a labor movement of like doing like a social justice movement. So we take this history that we learn about in my class, and then we go and the students write their own actos. And that's my classroom right there, B7. And there's the NPR, and here are the students doing their actos, and they do it, they produce them on themes that they choose. So it could be about climate change, or it could be about sexism, it could be about whatever they feel like is an issue that they want to learn a little bit about and write a play. So we do that every year. And I thought this would be a really good opportunity to bring in some of the skills that we learned about in this course. So here is my personal dimension. So a problem that, not a problem, but an issue that I run into every year with this unit is when I start to introduce the history, um, I have really different levels of understanding of what the heck I'm talking about. Some kids, they've been hearing about Cesar Chavez their whole life. They went to Cesar Chavez middle school. Other kids have like zero background knowledge. And then sometimes the background knowledge is just kind of like I do some checks for understanding, and the background knowledge is just kind of maybe inaccurate. So I thought that a really good way to kind of get started on this would to be to do like a personal reader history, but instead of just necessarily about themselves as a reader, it can also be about thinking of a time when you saw or heard of something that was unfair. And I can start that with being really broad. I usually do this as kind of a launch, but I think actually having like an intensive experience writing with a prompt and actually writing like a personal reader history would be more, um, it would elicit more from their responses, and I could write back to them and we can have more of a conversation, and we can talk about it. They can journal about it and we can talk about it in the class, and that can kind of like get things going for them, to build some connection, because the 1960s, that was a long time ago. It was a long time ago when I was a kid. It really feels like a long time ago to our kids. So maybe connecting it to something that they remember in their life, more personally, would be really helpful. And then for the social dimension here, I've got a gallery walk, where I've got different artifacts here. Like there's the flag of the United Farm Workers Union, and a newspaper article about Dolores Huerta. We can watch clips from Zoot Suit. We can see different pieces of Chicano theater, and it kind of like a multimedia experience, because I feel like that could be really powerful, other than just me showing stuff on the slides and having them write it down in a note taker, which is kind of what I do right now. Having an actual like multimedia gallery walk with different types of things to read. So it's not just like, you're reading a news article. It's like a news article. It could be a script. It could be part of a, like, part of a movie, part of someone's personal narrative, like their own like personal account of what they experienced as a farm worker. All of these things can really elicit a lot. And maybe for some kids, they're going to get more from reading a script. And other kids may think it's more interesting to read a news article, but just like kind of responding to it and letting other kids come and respond to what they responded to. I've done gallery walks before, but it's been more like, for this unit, it's been like, what questions do you have about this? What do you think about that? I didn't have as much material to respond to. And I feel like this would elicit a lot more. I think we could get a much richer conversation going with this. And then for my metacognitive dimension, this is think aloud and modeling and talk to the text. So I found a poem that I really love, and it's called I Am Joaquin. And Luis Valdez actually, weirdly, I found this poem and I thought it was really powerful. And then I found that Luis Valdez actually directed a dramatization of this poem back in like the early 70s, which is really, really cool. And it was amazing that connected. And I thought that doing a talk to the text with this poem and the students, and I thought kind of like the kids like responding, like, question marks, light bulb, heart, crying, like all sorts of different ways that they might be talking to this text, making predictions and making connections, and then having that lead to a conversation up here, and then having a student model a think aloud, like going up in front of the class and talking about just like where they were for different parts of it. It's a really epic poem. It's really, really long. So, it could probably be over the course of a few classes, like an extension of the launch, so the kids don't look at this huge text and get totally overwhelmed. One thing I really love about it is that it gives an opportunity, because the poem is in English and in Spanish, and I've always had really good luck in my class when I've brought in Spanglish texts, particularly this one play, Quinta Temporada, which that Valdez wrote, because there's characters who need to be really strong Spanish speakers. And every year that I've done it, I've had students who normally would be really shy about reading in class just get really excited to be like the reader, and translate for the class. And that just, I've seen that bolster a lot of confidence. So I think this would be a good fit. And that, so yeah, I've kind of got the arrows, like reading the play, reading the poem and doing talk to the text, leading to think aloud and modeling, leading to, you know, them bringing that into their final plays that they're going to write and having it be like a more rich experience. So yeah, that's my project. I'm excited to try all this out this year.